Okay. So let's just take a moment and sink into the room. Just pull yourself into this moment gently. Every breath bringing you deeper and deeper into this moment, exactly where you are. Looks like people are starting to come in. All right, guys. So we'll get started, but if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like addressed, feel free to put them in the chat and we will work it in. But otherwise, just step into the sanity of this moment. You've been running around. A world full of stories. Moving through its twists and turns and tunnels. Looking for a reward at the center of the labyrinth that never comes. So let's just step out of it. You can jump back in when we're done, but let's just arrive at this still moment. Tension at the forehead and crown. And just begin to watch the breath. Let your eyes take in the entire room at once. And just call off the scramble. Nothing to attain. Nothing to conjure into existence. Nothing to learn or take on. No one to please. No one to be dishonest to or to hide yourself from. Just step into the open, exposed honesty of this moment. And let's just be there together for a while. for those who just came in, if there's anything you'd like discussed, you're welcome to put it in the chat. Otherwise, let's just be done. Done with the search. Done with rejecting one thing in search of another. And just breathe in that free space. Whenever you really choose to go anywhere in the story and really give yourself to it, this is where you end up. Hold back at all. And you'll be spinning around in a world of separated shadow and light. But really choose to show up for the story, and you actually end up here. It's like one of those movies where the protagonist is trying to get away from a town where something bad is happening, and they drive and somehow find themselves back in the town again. That's what this world is like. only it's like there's two roads and two places. One is the place of the story. This world of pushing and pulling and chaos. And you're pushing and pulling to try and get away from it. To try and feel like you can get away from this lack of control. And just like in those movies, the more you try and drive away from it, the more you just keep returning to it. We resist it and resist it for lifetimes upon lifetimes, even though it's never once worked. And then on the other side of that coin, there's life outside the story, that peace outside the labyrinth. Where there's nothing to do, but you're comfortable, and you're complete, and everything's okay. And it's not separate from the story, because similarly, whenever you directly place your attention on any aspect of the story in full willingness, wholeheartedly, you end up free from the story. You end up in a moment of freedom. You end up here. In the first scenario, you're the snake eating your own tail, stuck on a loop. In the second, you realize that the majority of the scene is not that snake. It's the vast, silent, resonant, intelligent backdrop upon which the snake has been drawn. And you don't have to avoid or shun anything. If you get trapped in something, just stop resisting it, and you'll be free from it long before it resolves itself. For a long time, there'll be aspects of the world of that snake that are alluring to you, that trap your attention. Aspects of food, sex, drugs, anger, greed. because you're some kind of monster. You were designed to get stuck in that. That path was crafted for you. Every one of those little sticking points is a bucket of personal power that if you show up and face the discomfort, you strengthen in a way that you couldn't strengthen otherwise within the world of the story. You know, we've all seen people who have easy lives. Not a ton of big challenges put in their way. Those sorts of people always look most powerful in their youth, because they have the energy of youth. But without those challenges, they're not learning how to contain or direct that energy. They're not getting burned, so they don't have to figure out how to stop burning themselves. But as life goes on, it's harder for them to really build. The steam they didn't have to work for dies down. And what's left is a feeling of uncertainty. Then there's the people who have a lot of challenges and face them one after the other as they go about their life. In their youth, they seem weak. They seem troubled, and they are. But they're slowly gaining in strength, and everything they gain is theirs. It's part of the wisdom of their life story. With it comes an understanding not just of themselves, but of life and of people, and a compassion for how people get stuck. When life is feeling hard, I think it's really natural to wish that life could just be easy. But that wouldn't actually be useful to you. If you want life to feel easy so that you can take a break, I think that's a reasonable request. Simply shift your attention off your life story and enter the meditative state. And all of it falls away. Does it not? You can fill right back up so that you can then return to your challenging life and continue collecting your little buckets of power. Power over yourself. knowledge and understanding of how your world works. I don't think you ever get to a point where a part of you doesn't wish it would stop. I wish it too. But I've also gained enough personal power to know that while that feels like the answer, that isn't actually the answer. The answer is to show up, to do what you said you were going to do, to every day find a way to be more and more open to it exactly the way it is, to be in service in whatever way you can. And to just continue. I could make my life a lot easier than it is. And this is a rough week. But I also know the second I do that, I lose a major opportunity to learn how to maintain my balance in a very challenging setup. And I just show you that as an invitation for a different way to view your problems and a different way to approach the balance between your leisure time and your work. We all have a different set point for these things, and yours does not have to be mine. There isn't a right or wrong, and there's nothing to feel guilty or proud of. But over years, you do get to a point where you realize you're somewhere different than you were. That there's a strength there that just built slowly, that originally felt like weakness. Your relationship to the world around you changes. You have power, only now the power's in the right hands. It's in the hands of somebody who's growing spiritually and is only interested in what's good and right for the growth of everyone. It should be growing in your hands. Because it's not a meritocracy. Anybody who steps up and faces the moment in front of them starts to grow in personal power. Or they collect around them people who have already done enough of that. So retreating from a world that you can't really retreat from isn't the answer. Doesn't matter how elevated you get tonight. Tomorrow you will wake up in your world and all of its stories. How much power do you have to navigate them consciously? What's growing and what's being starved? And if that needs to be corrected, do you have the personal flexibility to correct it? Let's step into the silence and just let that percolate a little bit. Attention at the forehead and crown. Watch your breath. And then give yourself to the silence. quiet conversations you're having with yourself that you don't really realize you're having. And one of them is the knowledge that you're storing in the imagery in front of you. Set the room around you free. Release everything you think you know about it. Release it so deeply that if the walls want to move, they can move. That's you're setting free. But don't take my word for it. Do it now and see. Just give it back its autonomy. Nothing to control. Nothing to instruct. The people you're holding on to in your head, set them free. Let them be whatever they want to be. Nothing for you to do about it. Doesn't have to be forever. Just do it now. Let forever take care of itself. It's just an idea anyways. You were never really holding them in place anyways. It was a part of yourself that you externalized into a role that you then held in place. And what animated that story? Your own trapped personal power. Release it, and it comes back to you. Don't think about it, but from this space, can you see how you could be free? If your inner world and your outer world are connected in that way, the part of your outer world that you're beating yourself up over is a projection of your inner world, which means it's yours to set free. See that? Almost nobody does. It's too hard to see when you're entrenched in the story. But the meditative state lifts you out of it enough that you can see what's happening. this stillness that you've cultivated as a group provides a real service. It magnifies because you're together, and everyone connected to you feels it, whether they're aware of it or not. And to a lesser degree, it lifts things off of them and helps them see more clearly, which itself then spirals outwards. Your own spiritual peace is such a gift you can give. Without having to control or manipulate or convince. One of the most profound things you can give to the world and to your loved ones is just to be okay. To be one more person in the world that isn't catastrophizing. Especially in the midst of catastrophe. This week, once a day, I'd like you to pick one thing that you feel a minor resistance to. And I want you just to give yourself to it. Really step into it. You don't have to fake happy your way into it. Just don't protect yourself from it. Drop your defenses, drop your resistance, and just be with it the way you are with the breath, the way you are with the silence. And notice what that does to your day. Give it your full attention. Every fiber of your being aligned with what you're doing. Not through rigidity. Abide there. Make that task your home with no resistance. And just be in that space. You'll find yourself here. But don't take my word for it. Show yourself once a day for the next week. You guys are doing great. Are there any questions about that before we end for the night? Okay, everybody. I will be here next week. Have a great week, and I hope you learn a lot.
Thank you, Liam.
Thank you.
Thanks for the homework.